one of the most successful directors, filmmakers of all time, arguably the best film of all time for many people, The Godfather. Yet he's made more money from his, what started as a side hustle as a winery.
It was literally a side hustle, dude. It's just hilarious how no matter how famous you get, like the end goal is basically just selling a drink.
Fizzy water. Yeah.
But like, think about it. No, but think about it. It's like, what did George Clooney make his fortune off of? Like tequila, right?
Tequila, yeah.
It's like, what is Ryan Reynolds making his fortune off of? Aviation gin. It's like the end goal. No matter how you get to there, it's to sell some type of beverage.
Some sort of sugary or alcoholic drink at some point, I guess. Yeah,
that's pretty funny, right?
Respect. Welcome to another episode of No Investment Advice. You got Trunk fan Bilal Zaidi. Trunk, we're going to talk about Francis Ford Coppola, the legend, the guy who made The Godfather, the guy who made Apocalypse Now, legendary guy in Hollywood. I know you're a big film guy. You're a writer, obviously. What makes Francis Ford Coppola so special? Why is he one of your favorites?
Bro, first of all, let me ask you, what are your Coppola hits?
It's hard to go. It's got to be so basic, but right now, right? Godfather, dude. Yeah. It's hard to beat, you know what I mean? I'm not going to try to be all hipster about it. Be like, no, I really love this one from 1967. No. Like Godfather is, probably my favorite film of all time. I mean, it's basically that and Goodfellas and like, I love those films, man.
Is Godfather actually legit your favorite movie of all time?
I mean, honestly, I would say probably Goodfellas just because I've watched it so many more times. It's hard to say one. Do you know what I mean? I'd say like top 5 for sure.
Okay, it is like it's one of those movies when if it comes on, it's on TV. Imagine that we still watch cable. Yeah. Any scene that comes on TV, any part of it, you're just like, okay, I'm sitting down, I'm finishing.
Yeah, you gotta just respect it. You know what I mean? you gotta get the cat out. You're talking about Godfather now, yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many legendary scenes. You're laughing at the cat.
You gotta
get the cat out. It's a ridiculous thing to say.
He's talking about Marlon Brando at the very.
So Are you laughing at I went like this, put the cat out? That sounds ridiculous.
You know what? This is going to be a Francis Ford Coppola appreciation episode at this point. He has a new movie coming out this weekend. Megalopolis is his 23rd film. He's spent nearly 50 years making it. So I wrote about this last weekend. And, we were recording a little inside baseball. We were recording a little bit earlier this week. And earlier in the week, less of a news
Just
cycle.
A day early. Well, we might put it out a day early, so that's why.
Oh, yeah, we will. And, it's nice to do something that's more one-topic-y, evergreenish. And there's just so many lessons to be learned from Coppola's career. And just one thing I'll say about Godfather is this, blah. I love that you said, listen, I'm not going to try to hit you some 1967 movie. I'm just going to get right to it. It's like, hey, man, what's your favorite Kanye album? It's like, don't complicate it.
Let's not mess up College Dropout. Right? Oh, no, I was going to say College Dropout, though, to be honest, because the original.
No, I just go, well, what's funny is that I said My Dark Twisted Fantasy.
And I said College Dropout. Yeah, so it wasn't as obvious as I thought.
Well, you know what it is? Here, look, here's the Coppola sitch. He has 3 of the top 20 movie ever. Almost. If you go across any of these critics, and I know on one of the hobby horses of NIA is to make fun of like professional critics, but if you talk to anyone, you look at the IMDb scores, you look at these aggregated scores, it's like Apocalypse Now, Godfather 1, and Godfather 2. Those are 3 of the top 20 movies of all time.
Yeah.
It's insane. It went from 1972 was Godfather 1. 1974 was Godfather 2. 1979 was Apocalypse Now. And he also directed The Conversation, which was like a thriller spy kind of phone tapping movie starring Gene Hackman in 1974. Great movie. But that 4-year run, and I've talked to you about this before, but it's worth bringing up. I'm trying to think, has there ever been a better creative 7-year run than that streak? And the only things that really pop off my mind are like
Kanye's albums. What's going on? What are we going?
No, the Beatles, right? The Beatles like Beatles to like, I want to say like 64 to 69. If you look at their catalog, it's just like the most insane run ever. And there's other artists that had these runs, but like Coppola's
T-Pain in the 2000s, just. I mean, he had Lil Jon, back to back. I mean, he was run. I will say Lil Wayne, all jokes aside, Lil Wayne had a good
easy,
few years.
Early 2000s, like the album drops and mixtapes, the album drops.
The drought.
The drought.
Do you know? Have you seen the interview with him where he literally doesn't know they're his lyrics? Have you ever seen his video?
Oh, he's
they're
just
reading
so
out
prolific.
lyrics, and he's like, "I said that." And it's like, I mean, that's how you know it's that level where he doesn't remember saying it, man. What a wild guy.
Totally.
But yeah,
Well, let's
go
do
on.
this. Let's have a bit more. At this point, last week talked Mr. Beast's retention. We probably lost everybody at this point, but we'll put a little more structure.
It's the real people here, man. The people that care. It's all good.
So we'll go through his career. We'll just go through his career, and I know Bilal has a lot of points, bullet points that we've taken about this. As our friend of the pod, David Senra, had a great episode on Francis Ford Coppola probably 2 years ago, actually. But then in this essay I wrote, I collected a ton more from various interviews he's done over the years.
There was a documentary too, I think you watched.
A couple of documentaries I've done, I've watched of him. And I've been following his career for a very long time. So
you're basically a human GPT for this topic. Coppola. That's basically what you took in all this information. No, what I did like, people should obviously check out the write-up. It's in the show notes below. I say below, like, I guess on YouTube it's below, but yeah. But I like your angle. It was kind of like the entrepreneurial business side, which obviously is the focus of the pod as well. And I'm just going to call out a couple things because I think you had a really good angle for this. Well, the first thing is for this movie, he sold parts of his winery to help finance the majority of this film. It's a $120 million budget. So that tells me he's doing okay in the wine business, right? This is side business.
There was a news article 2 years ago when the production for the film started off, and it was crazy. I like fell on my chair when I read it. It literally was called the $100 million bet. And I'm like, wait, he's self-financing this movie by selling his winery? Because he's got have you ever been to a Francis Ford Coppola winery?
I don't think so. I mean, what's the name of them? Is it his name?
That's the name of the winery. Yeah, it's in Napa Valley.
Think I have. I don't think I have, no. Have you?
I have not either. I've been in Napa, but never went there. And but I've read that it's just what he did with that winery. I can see
you going to this chugging 5 in 1 hour, the Trung style. Just for anyone who's never been out with Trung, I've only done it a couple of times, but Trung is on the dad mode life, He's like, I got to get back in an hour. Let's get it going. Now, I appreciate that. Well,
Bilal's throwback here, which we're just going full segue now, is when I saw him in London last summer. It's like literally, we saw him at the, got off the metro. Is it called the metro? I don't know. The tube?
The tube, yeah.
Went straight to the bar, and like within 30 minutes, it was like 5 wines deep, and Bilal just like, he literally said, "You're in dad mode." He's like, he knows.
I love
Bilal
it.
knows what that looks like. But yeah, so the winery, he's made more money in his career from wine than in films. And I'd actually use that larger point as like the takeaway from his story, because I posted something on Friday about an interview he did during the Cannes Film Festival, and this is what he said. Is that the clip went viral, and it says, "I never cared about money. In the end, there are so many people when they die, they say, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that. But when I die, I'm going to say, I got to do this. I got to see my daughter, Sophia, win an Oscar. So she won an original screenplay for Lost in Translation. And I got to make wine. I got to make all these movies I wanted to make. And I'm going to be so busy thinking about things that I got to do that when I die, I won't notice the money that I spent, right?
Yeah, respect.
This is such a great perspective on life.
No, that's,
right?
And that's, people hear that phrase like, I get to do this versus, I have to do this. And that's kind of what he's saying when I hear that. But like, that's a beautiful thing, man. You said his daughter as well? Because I know he did stuff with his dad.
Sophia Coppola won, you've seen Lost in Translation. She was writer-director.
Oh, yeah, of course.
They're the first the first father-daughter duo to ever win an Oscar.
That's amazing. And he also did, because his dad plays a big part in this. I know we're jumping around.
Carmine Coppola,
the OG.
Yeah, well, we're not fully jumping around. We're dropping knowledge here. It's like Carmine, his father, was a classical musician, a flutist. He composed music for The Godfather 2, won an Oscar for that. Now,
one of my favorite lines from the book is, the story of the father is embedded in the son. I've used that so many times since.
Oh, that's a favorite.
The story of the father is embedded in the son. That's a beautiful line. And that is all about his dad. So why don't you tell us about his dad? Because I know they had a bit of a troubled relationship, it seems like.
Yeah, let's start now that we've kind of like verbal diarrhea for 10 minutes or 5-10 minutes. Let's get into the story, right? So Francis Ford Coppola was born in 1939, Detroit, Michigan. His parents were second generation Italian Americans. Carmine, his father, which you alluded to. His mother's name is Italia, which is very on the nose, right?
Love that.
So it was a pretty artistic family. His father, as we mentioned, a classical musician. His maternal grandfather, so this is on his mom's side, was a famous composer in Italy. Now, I wanna just pin one thing. I don't want people to get this twisted. Francis Ford Coppola did not come from money. Like, his family was artistic. He did not have money. His family did not have money. And I think often, like, the well, actually guy, when I posted that video of him talking and never cared about money, he's like, oh, well, where did he get his money from? It's like, no, literally, he risked everything, like hustled his way into this fortune. So I think that's another big part of this. The funny thing about Hollywood now is if you actually look at Hollywood, go look at the IMDb for like most of the up and coming stars. They're all Nepo babies. It's actually crazy, right? It's nuts. I mean, you can even say that Sofia Coppola is a Nepo baby. But
Yeah, I guess she is.
But like, her film is really lost in translation.
Yeah, it doesn't
It's
take anything
really
away
good,
from the
right?
film, but you're right. Like, that's important context. Yeah. But so what was it? Because I remember I've got some notes here from when I listened to this a long time ago. But basically, he said his dad said to him, "There can only be one genius in the family." Which, just take that in for a minute. Imagine that's your dad. I mean, that's a lot. I don't want to shit on his dad here because I don't know his life. But imagine you're this talented guy like he is clearly, and your dad is like, "There can only be one genius in the family," aka that's me, meaning the dad.
Me, Carmine, yeah.
You know, so I mean, what do you think? Do you think that was what was driving him, or do you know much more about that? Because that's a pretty wild thing to say to your kid.
So that's from the founders. David mentions that in the founders podcast, and I'm reading and watching some other videos. I got more context around how he kind of grew up in the family. So in a as you say, like, if that was the only context, does not sound great, right? But it's like the family had a couple weird dynamics, and none of it was from like Francis's side. Like, from everything I can tell, just a truly, like, a pretty, not that his life, like, everything was perfect. He made a lot of mistakes in his life, which he'll admit himself. But like, within his own family, like, he adored his brother. Like, his brother is 5 years older than him, August. So people might not know this, but August Ford Coppola is a novelist. That's the father of Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage is the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh my God, no way.
Yeah.
That is, wow,
Yeah.
I did not know that.
So that means Sofia Coppola, who won the Oscar for Lost in Translation, her cousin is Nicolas Cage. So if you watch the YouTube video of her winning, first of all, Francis is going nuts, as he should. But the cameras pan over to Nicolas Cage, who's losing his mind because it's his cousin. Also, Francis Ford Coppola's sister, Talia Shire, is also an actress. She played Connie Corleone in The Godfather. So if you'll remember the scene, the famous one is, well, there's a couple of them, that she is Sonny's, so Sonny, Michael's sister in The Godfather. She's the one that gets beat up by her husband, that gets set up for how Sonny gets killed in The Godfather. Spoiler. Sorry, it's been 52 years. There's no more
if you haven't watched
alerts.
it by this point, that's not our fault. But I was just, sorry, real quick on Nicolas Cage though, because now you got me down this rabbit hole.
Rafa, can you throw up a photo of the Coppolas with Cage? It's mind blowing.
That is wild. That is wild. Because I forgot how many movies this guy's done.
Yeah,
Face Off. I mean, Face Off. Gone in 60 Seconds.
Wait, Bilal, you're talking about a creative run. How about this run? In, I think, a 4-year period, Nicolas Cage did Leaving Las Vegas, which he won a Best Actor Oscar for. Then he did The Rock. Then he did Face Off, and he did Con Air. That is one of the craziest 4-film runs ever. Now, before we lost the original question, what I think about Carmine Coppola saying to his son, there can only be one genius in this family, kind of shitty. And but the other part I want to add is, again, did it drive Francis? I don't think it drove him.
He's just playing 4D chess, man.
I don't think it drove him from a negative side, because, again, he adored his brother, who's 5 years older. But this is what happened, this is good context to know as we keep walking through the story. He had a falling out with his brother because his brother was jealous of how successful Francis Ford Coppola became, which is crazy, right? And Francis, like, in every interview I've seen, is just like, he never held ill will. He's like, you don't understand, like, I worshipped my brother. But then he had this, he was older than me, and this there's tension because of how famous I got. And his brother, August Coppola, felt he could no longer use his last name because he's like, oh, like, my brother is so famous that they'll confuse it, right? and they won't realize I'm older
Yeah,
than him.
by that point, you don't want to just be so and so's brother. You want to be your own person, right? Yeah.
So back to his
a lot
dad.
of people do, in marriage as well. That happens a lot. It's like,
No, that's true, right? Well, here's an example. When you said off the top of my head, like Melinda Gates, she's going back to her OG.
I was thinking of 23andMe
right?
as well. Like, I don't know enough about her history, but what's her name?
Wojcicki. Sergey Brin's. Yeah.
Sergey Brin's. But yeah, now again, that's exactly, we're kind of proving what I was saying there, because I'm the same. I'm like, I forgot her name. But Susan Wojcicki, no?
Yeah. No, Anne. Susan.
Oh, sorry, Anne. Susan's YouTube, exactly.
Rest in peace. So let me keep working on Carmine quickly. So like you had said, you can always understand the story of the son by the story of the father. The story of the father is embedded in the son. So again, shout out to David Senra, who mentions this a lot during his podcast, various episodes. I actually saw Francis Ford Coppola talk about that quote specifically in a GQ interview 2 years ago. And I think the two things from his family that he did take away, it wasn't that quote that you said where, there can only be one genius. The two things was this. It was his father was never as successful as his father thought he could be. Like clearly he thought he was a genius, right? But his actual career, he was like the main flutist for NBC, did a couple, well-known radio shows, but he didn't become Francis Ford Coppola, right? And like, in fact, the highest repute he ever got was working on his son's projects, Godfather 1, Godfather 2, and Godfather 3. So I think the main lessons that his Francis took away from Carmine was like, that you don't want that feeling of regret, of like never fully becoming what you thought you should have been. So I think that more than anything really drove him. I think that kind of like the chip that his dad had on his own shoulder, he must have felt that insecurity growing up just from that quote, right? The quote is an insecure quote. He probably was more driven by, I don't want to be that, than the actual slight of that quote, if you know what I mean. That's my read of it.
Yo, Tron, do you know what? I Googled that quote, the story of the father is embedded in the son. And the first result on videos is a clip from NIA's YouTube. And it was recorded this time last year, literally September 26th. And we're recording this like 2 days. Basically, that's just funny timing, man. We literally spoke about it a year ago.
Dave was on?
No, I don't. Maybe it was when David was on, or maybe it was just us talking about it. I don't even know. It could be. It could be either or. I haven't clicked the video because I was trying to listen to you. But that's funny timing. So we're just revisiting it 1 year exactly. But yeah, I didn't want to stop your flow there. So that was his dad. Anything else on that in terms of his dad just being like really tough on him?
No, I think
I guess the happy ending though is that they ended up working together on the score of his movie, right?
Versus him and his brother, right, where they basically didn't talk at the end of his brother's life, which is really shitty.
No shit.
And then the other thing I say about his childhood is he had polio, which is fucking crazy. He was born in 1939. So FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, former president, also had polio. So a lot of people during the 30s and 40s that believe he paralyzed. He overcame it. But his interest in film began when he was bedridden from polio. And then like we can fast forward a bit. So he went to Hofstra College, and at Hofstra, he studied theater arts. And a lot of people realized then that like this guy is like super ambitious. And again, he didn't want to have that same regretful future that clearly that his father had. So this guy was just an animal in college, like ran the theater club, like ran the improv club or whatever, at theater. And people were just like, this guy's a hitter. And then we'll fast forward to UCLA Film School, where he went to school, and he had his first feature film. But did you have any thoughts before we get into that?
No, that was great. Let's go. I mean, I did want to call out, again, the parallels as we're going through all of this. One of my favorite parts of your write-up was you comparing films and startups. And just to frame what we're going to go into, all the details, both of them require someone to raise funds or finance a production, recruit talent, directors, actors, etc., and deliver a product, aka a film in this case. So that just kind of gives like a bit of an overarching theme to a lot of the things that he ended up doing throughout his career. So yeah, that was the only thing I wanted to add there.
No, I like that you mentioned that because the most famous example, we did talk about it last year about Blumhouse Productions. The most famous current example of like people treating films as VC is Blumhouse Productions. And I mean, if you think about it, it really is, right? Each one is a brand new project from scratch in a lot of ways.
Yeah, completely.
It's like you got to get the team together. and you got to deliver the product.
Unless you're Fast and the Furious 12,
yeah,
it's a little bit different.
That this is actually what made
they created they created the franchise though. They made the
10-year
Subway
one,
or whatever. Yeah.
No, but actually, you know what it is? Is a quick segue is what made the Avengers run that ended with Infinity War and Endgame so impressive was that was a 15-year movie basically. So that actually wasn't they built that entire startup in that way, right? It's like, of course, they're individual films. I think the whole MCU ended up being 15 films, but that was the pieces to keep that together is incredible. So we'll fast forward a bit to the first film and the person of note here is Roger Corman. And
so what's the name of the film? Dementia? Is this the one?
Dementia 13 is the name of the film.
And just so people know where we're going real quick, in your write-up, you say you're kind of storytelling through 8 films and 2 business ventures. So I don't know if we'll go through every single one.
We won't go through every one.
But just to give people a rough frame of where we're going. So this is the first one, Dementia 13, 1963. Yeah.
So this one is... the thing I took away from this was just the idea of the dude, full on cliche, make your own luck. It's like preparation meets opportunity. But the interesting thing here about this segment is Roger Corman. Do you ever heard of this guy, Roger Corman?
No.
So he died earlier this year, died at 98. He's an absolute legend in Hollywood. An absolute legend, and I've never seen a single one of his movies. But the reason he's a legend is because he made so many low budget thriller, horror, culty type of flicks with those probably, you'll see the cover with a half a naked lady and a monster. That's the type of stuff he's making, right? But the way he produced
movies, did he make Silence of the Lambs?
No.
Did you say Roger Corman?
Hold on a second here.
Did I? I mean, let's just check because maybe I'm.
No, he's an actor in Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay. I was gonna say, damn.
The director is Jonathan Demme. Well, you just brought up the main point I'm saying though. The reason he was probably in that film was as a thank you for helping people on the come up. Because Roger Corman's whole thing, he had a famous pitch. He would go to up and coming directors and actors and be like, if you do a good job in my film, you won't ever have to work for me again. He's basically saying, funny. You come work with me, I'm going to get you into the system. You go do other stuff. So I'm going to list off people you may know. Who's worked through his system. Martin Scorsese, James Cameron, Peter Fonda, Jack Nicholson, Dennis Hopper, William Shatner, Francis Ford Coppola. He gave all these people their starts. So this guy, if you go look at James Cameron, Martin Scorsese stories, go start with Roger Corman. It's insane. And so Roger Corman, though, to kind of pump out the movies at the pace that he did. So again, these are schloppy, thriller, not even B grade. These are D level films, right? But this is the business model that he wanted. And the thing he would do though is to pump out films like this, if he had the crew on set somewhere, he would be like, okay, we're done filming this one film. Now, since I got you and your contract says you're here for another week, I'm just going to grind out another film right now. So total hustle.
No way.
Yeah, dude.
He's 2-for-1 special. What's going on? That's wild. He's since you're here, why don't but it's not like it just takes one day to record. This is 6 weeks or something, or 2 months.
No, that's what I mean. No, but then he's we have 1 week with you on contract. We're going to make a film in this 1 week. That's so this insane. Is how Coppola got his first film done. They were filming a movie with Roger Corman in 1962, going around Europe, all these cheap sets. The film had a budget of $165,000. By the end of the filming, they're in Ireland. They wrap up filming, and Roger Corman's like, oh, look, I got $22K left. And I already hired you guys. So he goes, I want to make another movie now. You know what Francis Ford Coppola does? He's like, this is my chance. I'm not dropping the ball here. He writes a draft that night. And he's like, he gave it to Roger Corman.
Wait, he writes a draft of a whole movie or the outline?
No, a treatment, a treatment. Call it 5 to 10 pages.
Yeah,
but it's but he just goes, because Roger Corman wants to.
I'm going to say, you're not writing a whole script in a night, obviously.
Exactly.
But,
but I mean, he probably could. Rocky was written by Sly Stallone in 3 days, right? So these things happen. So Coppola busts his ass. He's 23 years old at this point. Just goes overnight, writes 5, 10 pages. and Roger Corman wants a ripoff of Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock's The Psycho. So that's what Coppola does. Corman reads it, done deal. He's like, here you go, man. You go make this movie. So
I'm trying to think of any. The only thing I know, we keep talking about Kanye here, but it's nowhere near the same thing.
David,
but,
David brings up
but in the Kanye documentary, where Kanye has got, like, he's basically shopping around his tape, and then he goes in the studio with Jay-Z. And then and he's like, look, and he's basically telling them, look, I've got all this, and he's just trying to pitch it every single time. And at one point, he gets on the tune, or maybe it's like he gets Jay-Z on his song or something. I can't remember. But it's like, that's the sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean.
Well, here's one. Yeah, here's a tech one for the entrepreneurs that listen to this. I'm an entrepreneur. You guys are entrepreneurs. For the entrepreneurs listening and the tech people, remember when Travis Kalanick tweeted out, want somebody for this role, XYZ. Ryan Graves jumped on that, worth $1 billion now, right?
Oh,
it's like that. Jumped on it, hit him up. Is like, dude, I'm in, I'm game, right? So like these things happen, and
the key is knowing when it's that time, and most of the time you don't know,
because sometimes it's just obnoxious, right? It's like, but the whole point is like, what we've talked about is like, it's both sides. You take shots. You can't be mad if the person says no. Like if Roger Corman said no, like you can't be mad about it, right? But like you take a shot, yada yada yada, and then I'll just like speed through his next film here because it's we want to get to the juicy stuff. But You're a Big Boy Now. Basically, when he had done this movie with Roger Corman, he had enough chops now to go to a Hollywood studio. It's time to graduate, right? What did Roger Corman say? Roger Corman said, if you do a good job on my film, like you'll never have to work for me again. So like Coppola, next thing he does, moves on and does it with Warner Brothers. Go ahead, Bilal, you had a thought?
No, I guess building on that theme, the other idea is often you've written about it as well. It's like saying yes and then learning on a job was one of the things.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
That might have been from my notes from before, actually. But yeah, there was an example where he volunteered to handle sound design on a film without really knowing anything about it.
Oh yeah, here's a quote. He says, my peculiar approach to cinema is I like to learn by not knowing how the hell to do it, because then I'm forced to discover how to do it. So that's he actually said this.
Often the case, man, yeah.
Exactly. That's often the case. And also, if you look at his career, 23 films, the only sequels he's ever done are the 3 Godfather films. I like to pretend that the third one didn't happen. But like he talks about, in that GQ interview I mentioned, he said that if you do a movie that you know how to do, sure, you might make some money, but you don't learn anything. And like his movie Megalopolis, the one that's coming out this Friday, he said he had no idea what he was doing. I mean, he's 85 years old, one of the most accomplished directors ever, and just did not really know how to grapple with this. And then we'll learn, like, he didn't know how to grapple with that story is what I mean. Like, he knew how to direct, he knew how to hire, but like that specific story, he didn't know how to tell it. And then like, he really had to wrestle with it.
By the way, we didn't really talk about it up front, but it's about the fall of the Roman Empire, is it?
Yeah, it's set in modern times.
Sick. Okay. And it comes out at the end of September.
Yeah, this Friday. I'm going to watch it for sure. I'll watch it.
A couple days from now. Yeah, great.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, he get a job with Warner Brothers. The film's called You're a Big Boy Now. We can fast forward through this, but the whole point is he meets George Lucas here. George Lucas.
This is pretty big because I had this on my notes too. I wrote about the come up with George Lucas and Scorsese, which was wild in the
Spielberg,
60s.
And Brian De Palma. And
wow.
They were called
Brian De Palma, Scarface, right?
Yeah, exactly, buddy.
Okay. There we go. I've seen Scarface at least 15 times, no lie. That was like the high school
more
classic,
than Godfather, right?
Oh my God.
No, but Lucas and him, but we always like saying game recognized game. That's one of those situations. Like Lucas saw, Coppola saw Lucas and he was his production assistant on the 2 films actually. It was on I think the other one's called The Rain People and You're a Big Boy Now. It doesn't really matter. It's not germane to the story, but he's like game recognized game. He's like, this motherfucker is a hitter. He's like, this guy knows, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
he's like,
you know when it's the real deal in this case. Well, so and then Trung, let's fast forward because I think people of NA know about us being a fan of independence, where you can do your own stuff.
You like this part? Okay.
Number 3, American
Zoetrope.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. American Zoetrope. This is all about him founding an independent film studio. So this seems like quite a pivotal one. Yeah. Right? With Lucas. Okay.
So I'll walk through this and I love your questions afterwards. But first of all, do you know what a Zoetrope is?
I have no idea.
Okay, you know those cylinder things that you spin and there's slits and lights come out and like a
Okay.
horse, see a horse move? It's like an 1800s thing. It's a
It
it's a
says
way
an
to
early form
show
of animation technology.
exactly.
Okay.
All right, so let me get this trope. I'm going to rip off just a little bit of history about the film industry. So between the 30s and 50s, film was huge, and the most canonical example of film being huge was Gone with the Wind. If you on an inflation adjusted basis, Gone with the Wind is the highest grossing movie of all time. I think it's made like $4 to $5 billion in today's dollars. Granted, what else are you doing in 1936? I think that's when the movie came out. You're going to the theater 10 times to watch that film, right? So like, of course, it's going to make a ton of money. But in the 1960s, what was invented, Bilal, in the early 60s? What technology was invented that could chip away at the film industry? It's actually relevant today if you think about it. TV. TV
Oh
really
yeah, I was gonna say TV,
yeah.
but then I was like, wasn't that a little bit
That's so
before
obvious,
50s
right?
or
Yeah.
something?
No, I mean like culturally, TV.
Oh,
started
like
really
it popularized. Yeah.
Yeah. So like TV started chipping away at the film industry. And in the same way now, but actually quite true though, like streaming has and social and YouTube have really kind of wrecked like the long-term viability of theaters.
Yeah, like streaming is now the version of that, I guess. Yeah.
It's like TV, that's what people felt at the time in the 1960s. It's like, oh man, like theaters might be done. People are just gonna stay
Well, I
at
guess
home.
it's just the difference is like where people only went to theaters, and then you're like, now we can make movies for people to watch at home.
Like
And then you
high
had-
quality stuff.
Yeah, high quality. And then you had the blockbuster era. Then you had the streaming Netflix era. But like that changes now. Not only are people streaming the movies at home, but those movies become from 2-hour movies to 10-hour series now.
Exactly.
So that's been the change, I guess.
It's actually a better piece of content, like for
Yeah.
certain people. The competition is so extreme now. But like this actually materially impacted the theater business. 69 and 70 were two of the worst years on record. So interesting thing happened. You know how now, when you look at these, a lot of these, like Paramount was bought by Larry Ellison and his son David Ellison, like and all these like struggling streaming services like Peacock, Paramount, Max. Everyone's like, oh man, like why doesn't Apple just buy them? Right? You know, deep pockets are buying these media assets, right? Back in the 60s, the deep pockets buying media assets were conglomerates. So we don't know about these companies now, but a company called Kinney, which ran funeral parlors and parking lots, bought Paramount. Golf plus Western Industries.
Wait. Say that as someone who ran funeral
a conglomerate
parlors.
that ran like 30 businesses, including funeral parlors.
Is that
and
like a
parking
private
lots.
equity style? Like they're just a holding
Yeah,
company?
like that. They
vibe?
just had money, and it's like Golf and Western, which bought Golf and Western bought Paramount. Kinney bought Warner Brothers. But the whole point is this: Golf and Western, which bought Paramount, which made Godfather, did manufacturing natural resources and 60 other companies, right?
That's insane.
So like that was a situation. So what happens with corporate control? The film and directors and the studios, it's very formulaic at this point. So you had said independent, and the big takeaway here is this: have you ever seen the movie Easy Rider? This is a movie's pivotal
No.
in Hollywood history. It came out July 1969. It's about like a motorcycle road trip abroad America. It was Jack Nicholson's big breakthrough. So Jack Nicholson, directed by Dennis Hopper. But the whole point, the reason I bring up Easy Rider, it was a cultural phenomenon, but it made $60 million on a $400,000 budget, 150 times return. So 60 million back then was probably almost close to $500 million now.
So 150x return, you said.
Yeah, on a $400,000 budget, it made.
What would
60 million.
What would be the benchmark now? Like, what's a good range
Inflation
for something
adjusted.
doing well now? Like, not the raw numbers, but I'm saying an X return. Like, if you
Oh man, if you did
if you 5x,
yeah,
that's
If you
already
5x
amazing,
a
right?
Hollywood film, it's amazing, right?
So
If
just
10x is
for
a home
comparison,
run.
150x obviously is because it's
It's
a low
insane.
base, but still,
It's insane. And so people are like,
it's like
oh,
the friends and family round of films, basically, right? It's
yeah,
like-
exactly.
yeah.
No, but
There
like
we go.
this is like, it was like this film was made outside of the traditional studio system, which we just talked about. It was being owned by conglomerates. Like Bilal's like, what? A funeral parlor? But like,
Oh, another, but this is the Joel Bowden coin of like, you know, the
Yeah,
return
buddy.
you're getting. You're getting some ridiculous returns here. Okay. But
so
okay,
now we're talking,
yeah.
right? So it's proven, this film's proven that you don't have to work through necessarily in the Hollywood system. So this goes to your point. American Zoetrope was founded by Lucas and Coppola in, I think, around the summer of 69. I saw December 69 somewhere, but it was shortly after Easy Rider. So these two guys see Easy Rider like, God damn, this movie is flexing on them. So it doesn't mean you leave the studio system entirely. It just means you can try to take shots outside of it.
That's the main thing, right?
And you can control projects outside of it. You take risks outside of the system, and you can still join up for distribution later, yada yada.
Yeah, but you got the upside there.
Exactly. You don't have to rely on the system. And I mean, in the 70s, this group that we talked about, the movie brats, they went on to make The Godfather, American Graffiti, Mean Streets, which is Scorsese, Carrie. So Scarface, De Palma's first big hit was actually Carrie, that Stephen King adaptation about the high school, like monster high school murder film.
Isn't it kind of what Stephen King, by the way, we got to do another episode on that guy, because this guy is an absolute
monster.
Hitter. Insane.
Monster. So a few more Jaws came from this group: Spielberg, Taxi Driver, Scorsese, Star Wars. So Zoetrope didn't actually produce all these movies, but like Coppola was the elder statesman in this group, because remember when we talked about Roger Corman and he made that movie early in his career? He was like one of the few guys like in the 20s that just hustled his way to being a director.
Trunk, just to relay it back to like our world, business tech world, are they kind of like the PayPal mafia of the film world?
100%.
Is that a good correlation? Yeah,
that is a very good analogy. And
I'm sure they'll be very happy about that comparison. Yeah. But yeah, okay. So yeah, was there anything more on that part, or should we fast forward to Godfather 1972?
Yeah, you're right. My wheelhouse.
Keeping the highest standards. I like the subtitle
so
here.
Throw me some thoughts here about Godfather before I run into the business.
I guess for me, being like an absolute amateur with all this stuff, you know, obviously it's the most famous film out of this whole lot for me. Maybe Apocalypse Now as well. I think The Godfather is still bigger, right? Like in terms of
culturally, it's culturally. Like, and creatively, it's like it's considered by many the greatest film ever.
Yeah, completely. So yeah, I don't have anything else, but I guess curious to get your take on what makes it. You know, you've written it, keeping the highest standards. Was this just him up leveling his skills so much and taking it to another level? There's also, you know, multiple parts of the story, and they're long films as well. So what was so significant about this one?
I think this was like it was like the perfect storm in a lot of ways, and he didn't want to do it. He kind of backed his way into this film. So like I'll walk through all the parts of it, but like a very telling quote was from author Jenny M. Jones. She wrote this great book called The Annotated Godfather. She basically goes through the entire script and like just explains every single page about the backstory of it. But the thing to remember here, and there's a whole documentary. Not documentary. It was a fictional biopic made on Amazon Prime. It's called The Offer. I don't know if you've seen it.
It's called The Offer?
Yeah, it's about the making of The Godfather.
Oh, wait. I think you've either mentioned it or I've heard it. I need to watch this for sure.
So let me just give Jenny's quote here. She says, "One can't help but marvel at how The Godfather ever got made when every conceivable obstacle stood in its way. A writer who didn't want to write, so it's Mario Puzo, who wrote the book The Godfather. A studio that didn't want to produce it, that's Paramount. A film no director would touch. 12 directors turned it down, including Coppola. A cast of unknowns. No one wanted Al Pacino. Marlon Brando was considered very toxic at the time, and he obviously won an Oscar for this. A community was against the film. The Italian American Civil Rights Group was against it. Also, the Mafia was against it. If you watch The Godfather now, you know, a little fun fact, you won't hear the word mafia or La Cosa Nostra, because the mafia basically threatened the production and said, if you include these names, like you will pay for that.
Yeah.
So to answer your question specifically on like, how is it? I mean, just this is just Coppola's masterpiece, man. You know, like we talk about Kanye and we talk about any artist, it's like some people just everything hits at once, right?
Yeah, just everything's coming together with. And I'd also want to add to that, Drunk, to get your take on what makes The Godfather so great, because I know a lot of people listen to this, watched it, love it, but there's other people who are like, oh, it's all right, I couldn't get into it, it's too long, why is it overrated?
This is it, right? This is the 50,000 foot level of why it's so great. Aside from the acting and the film stuff, the directing, it's a story about family, right? Like if you watch TV Succession, it's basically The Godfather, or a version of it, because the core of The Godfather is really about Vito Corleone, Marlon Brando, passing on his criminal enterprise or the business. I mean, they don't perceive themselves as criminals, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Passing that business on to one of his three sons, right? And I mean, I'll give you the.
Oh, that's a great. Yeah, I never even thought about that with
Well, here's a
Succession.
very inside baseball move. Like who's a consigliere of the Godfather family? It's Tom Hagen, who's played by Robert Duvall, and who is the consigliere or the outsider in the Succession? Tom, also named Tom, right? It's like there are parallels here. And whereas the Godfather is three sons, obviously Succession is two sons and a daughter, and obviously
And cousin
Succession,
Greg. Yeah,
and cousin Greg.
Yeah, cousin Greg.
And obviously, Succession also has connections to the Murdoch family. But anyways, Succession, family, those are timeless themes, right? Like these are that's the real appeal of and Coppola knows that. Coppola, to answer your question specifically, he actually added scenes about the family more because that was missing from the source material, Mario Puzo's book. So Coppola, that was probably his genius contribution on the story side, was taking this mob story and then adding, really centering around the family. That makes it universal. That makes it timeless.
Yeah.
That makes it like a King Lear type situation, right? Like Shakespeare, this thing will last for 500 years. So,
and was it a success straight away? Because, like Scarface, for example, I don't think was a success straight away. It became more of a success.
Massive,
I don't think it did well in the movie theater, I think.
Godfather crushed it. Absolutely crushed it. And I'll give you some background on it. So Paramount was not doing very well as a studio in 1970. That year, they decided to greenlight The Godfather. And the reason they did it is because the only successful film they had that year was a movie called Love Story. That story was based on a book. So they're like, oh, we need to start adapting books to film. Guess what they owned the rights for? The book The Godfather, written by Mario Puzo. They bought the rights to Mario Puzo's book for $80,000. Okay, it's one of the greatest deals in Hollywood history. So Puzo, I mean, we won't cry for Puzo. He ended up getting 2% of profits on The Godfather. So quick math here: Godfather made about 280 million on a 7 million budget, so 40 times.
Wow,
crazy. And inflation adjusted, that's over $1 billion in box office. So it's really more like 1.4 billion box office in today's dollars.
They're all doing fine, 40. Basically.
Yeah. Everyone's eating. So the interesting thing is, because we do want to talk about it more on the business side, Coppola was backed into this movie because American Zoetrope, his independent studio, while it was creatively trailblazing, didn't do it actually very well financially in the early 70s. So a year or two in, it's like a startup, right? They launched it in San Francisco. The actual reason they launched in San Francisco is because they literally physically wanted to be away from LA. Like they wanted to be New Hollywood. That was the idea. But George Lucas basically begged Francis Ford Coppola to make The Godfather. And he basically said, if you take this project, do whatever they want. So Paramount, you get the money and we can do whatever we want so we can make our movies, right? So that's interesting. So The Godfather, he's really backed into it. And the reason Coppola didn't want to do The Godfather, at first I mentioned 12 directors said no, was you may not know this from the times, like gangster films. I mean, you'd mentioned a lot of product. You mentioned Goodfellas, you mentioned Godfather, right? Sopranos. Gangster films in the 60s were like considered very lowbrow. And they're considered like Frank Sinatra type films, pseudo Hollywood, whereas Coppola wanted to make this intellectual family succession story, right, which we just discussed. And Paramount had actually made a film in 1968 starring Kirk Douglas, a mob film called The Brotherhood, totally bombed. So every director is being asked to make this film. They're like, man, we're not doing a mobster film. And first of all, the mafia is pissed off. Like these Italian American civil rights groups are pissed off. Like we want no smoke, right? But Coppola wanted to do it only because he needed the money for Zoetrope, American Zoetrope. So they offer 125 grand and 6% of the film's profits. And I just told you how profitable it was. He probably walked away from this with 10 mil. So I'll fast forward through this, and don't even worry about the time check because we're gonna push this because there's too much good stuff.
Yeah.
And so he green lights it. Paramount greens and agrees to do it with him, but they want it. And this is where you said, where did it go for him to keep it high standards? So remember, he was gonna do this for money, right? And he already got paid, so he could have mailed it in, but instead he went, no. I'm not going to mail this one. I know I'm supposed to do this for money, but I'm still a young gun. I still got to make my masterpiece. I don't want to mail it in. And the film started with a budget of 2.5 million. And Paramount wanted him to film in St. Louis instead of New York, which is where the book is set, and wanted him to film in 1970s, which is contemporary to when they were filming, when they're existing, obviously, versus post-war 1945, because then Paramount would have to pay for the costumes and design sets. So it would have been much cheaper to film in St. Louis and set it in the 1970s. Coppola said, no, it has to be post-war. We have to have the right costumes, the right sets, and we got to film in New York. So that bumped the budget 3 times to 7 million. That was the part of him keeping the high standards. But Paramount was just in his ass the entire time. They hated Brando. They hated Pacino. They complained about the lights. They complained about the music. And basically, 2 things saved him on this project. The first thing that saved Coppola was that he won an Oscar for the film Patton, which is about George S. Patton, the famous general, right? So how crazy is that? Like, the thing I forgot to mention is on his come up, you remember with Roger Corman, how I said, he was able to get that film because he wrote that script or the treatment and then the script. That's his main skill, right? His main skill is screenwriting. Like, he was a top tier screenwriter and he won an Academy Award for the film Patton. And while he was filming The Godfather and you're trying to fire him, he wins an Academy Award. So this is what he says. He says, he recalls the night he won the Academy Award. He's like, I was in New York about to get fired from The Godfather. I was watching the Academy Awards with Martin Scorsese. And then he said to me, how are they going to fire me now after winning the award? The other thing that happens inside
like
baseball.
A G. Yeah, like a G. Yeah, I love
For
that.
Godfather lovers is, if you remember the scene where Michael Corleone, he turns the corner, he takes out 2 people in a restaurant. That's the scene that really changed his fortunes with Paramount. They watched that and they're like, oh, this shit is real.
Real
and
deal,
there's like, we're just going to green light that. So, I mean, super quickly, film success, creative, financially, for Coppola. And I mean, what's the lesson here is like, he was backed in the corner, but then also refused to just mail it in. And it created the greatest movie ever.
Yeah, it went
right?
up a level for sure there, obviously. All right, let's keep it going with. Do you want to move on to the winery? So
yeah, the wine's a great call.
This is obviously a big. So just a reminder, what you said earlier in the show. You know, one of the most successful directors, filmmakers of all time. You know, arguably the best film of all time for many people, The Godfather. Yet he's made more money from his what started as a side hustle as a winery.
It was literally a side hustle, dude.
So it's $500 million side hustle. So let's talk about it. What was it just his passion? He got into it and then it just grew? Or what was the deal?
Not even, man. It's like he literally made some cheddar from The Godfather. And this I'm literally gonna read to you his thought process. And my takeaway here, I'd love to know your takeaway. My just takeaway is it was so similar to his quote that we said at the beginning. It's like, I never cared about money. It's like, what experiences can I build, right? And I know that's a trite thing to say, but like,
no, but it's true.
But the amount of times this guy like literally just went all in, and the stress he put himself through, as we'll see in Apocalypse Now, closer to when we wrap up this episode, is like he lived it. So here's what he said: I had no money whatsoever to my name, much less influence or connections when I came to California and go to UCLA Film School. That was in the early 60s. I had not a penny. But after The Godfather, I got the first little money I ever had. Me and my wife, Eleanor, who sadly passed away earlier this year, rest in peace, lived in a house in San Francisco. And I said to my wife, let's buy a cottage in Napa Valley so the kids can go to a place where there are trees and maybe an acre of grapes, and we'll make wine like my grandfather did, and we'll give it to relatives for Christmas. Like, he was going to make small batch wines, right? She liked the idea of a little summer house, so we're looking at little cheap summer houses, and the agent said, this isn't for you, but they're going to auction the Nybaum estate, the original house in a big hunk of the mountain. I said, what's that? And then we went to look at it. They liked it enough, and they literally just wanted it for their family. They bought it. Their bid didn't go in, but then a developer bought it. They're unable to build it, and so like Coppola literally just saw that in the news, and decided to call them up, be like, "Hey, heard your development ain't going so well.
That's funny.
Can I just throw you some cheddar?" And they sold it. They literally just bought it on a whim, and then this is how they started the winery. And this actually kind of fast forward just quickly to the Apocalypse Now, but during Apocalypse Now, he had a lot of money problems. And so at the depths of the money problems, his wife, Eleanor, was like, okay, well, what are we gonna do? Like, do we just sell the winery? He's like, we have this winery. And she literally said, what should we do? We have 100 acres of grapes and we don't know anything about how to run a wine business. It's like, maybe we should just get rid of it. And then Francis Ford Coppola says, well, I didn't know anything about how to make movies either, really. So let's just do our best. So they just YOLO'd it, man.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
And they ended up selling it for 500 million in 2021. I'm pretty sure they owned probably at that point 60 to 70% of it, because you still need capital to build this thing. But a big part about Francis Ford Coppola Winery, that, I mean, have you ever been? I mean, you've been in Napa, right?
Yeah, I've been in Napa, but not there.
Have you ever been to like
thing.
Have you ever been in Napa, a state where it's like you can spend all day there? There's like activities. Yeah, he kind of invented. Wouldn't invented, but he's one of the main
popularized it maybe.
Yeah, so he during the depths of the financial crisis, 2008, he borrowed 20 million to build a pool at Francis Ford Coppola Winery, and his whole point was,
so you just go and chill there versus just
kids come here, they play. You see, and a lot of wineries copied that. So like again, dude, just pure YOLO, man. Any thoughts on that before apocalypse?
No, I mean, that's a hilarious story. I love that. You just absolutely YOLO'd. And it's kind of like, I mean, I'm curious to hear your thoughts real quickly on, he was already obviously famous by then, right? And successful. Yeah. So how much of it was just like, he's, everyone knows his name and everyone's like, we need to go to that. It's probably a good winery too, but also his fame obviously helps. Nothing wrong with that. I think that's a great thing. It's actually a great way to, I hate to use this phrase, monetize his name.
That's it, right?
It's basically the, the prime of the day, like the
you actually want to laugh?
KSI. And go on.
Did you see the video of Michelle Obama shilling her a club soda drink at Costco?
No, I didn't even know that.
Saw this. Well, this is hilarious because, I mean, nothing against her, the product. It's like, it's just hilarious how no matter how famous you get, like the end goal is basically just selling a drink.
Fizzy water. Yeah.
No, but think about it. No, but think about it. It's like, what did George Clooney make his fortune off of? Like tequila, right?
Tequila, yeah.
It's like, what is Ryan Reynolds making his fortune off of? Aviation gin. It's like the end goal, no matter how you get to there, is to sell some type of beverage.
Some sort of sugary or alcoholic drink at some point, I guess. Yeah.
So that's pretty funny, right?
Respect.
So Apocalypse Now is my favorite story, and
let's do it.
It's too bad
that
this is
1979.
That's
your
when the film came
subtitle
out.
for this is Risking It All. So it probably took longer to make, obviously.
So this story is actually fascinating, and this is actually for the NIA listeners, entrepreneurial crowd. This is the one where, first of all, my recommendation is go watch The Heart of Darkness. It's a documentary filmed by his wife Eleanor, and it's about the making of Apocalypse Now. And I'll just walk through now the difficulties with Apocalypse Now. So the film started in March 1976 about the Vietnam War. All right. So he's making a movie in the Vietnam War. They're filming in the Philippines. Now the absurdity of this is that the fall of Saigon happened less than a year before. So he's making a movie about Vietnam. Like the trauma of Vietnam hasn't even been processed, right? But he's just going for it because, as he said, he just wants to try new stuff. None of the studios would back him on this because, like you mentioned, was he famous? Yeah, he's the most famous director in the world, and no studio wanted to touch this project. There's a couple reasons. Number one,
just because it's too soon, or it's just like controversial.
That's part of it. Vietnam it was still in the midst of it. I mean, films were coming about Vietnam in the late 70s, but they're like, it's not super our priority right now. The film is pretty dark, right? It's based on Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, the 1889 novella about colonialism in the Belgian Congo. But Coppola also, from The Godfather, we had talked about The Godfather, about the creativity issues he had with Paramount. He's like, I'm never going through that again. Or that's in his mind. He's like, he wanted full creative control and he wanted full ownership of the film rights. And what studio is going to give you that, right? Yeah. But he had been he was so annoyed by the experience of The Godfather. That was his perception. And also, interestingly, he was so successful with Godfather, and we would know this from now, is what kind of movie do you think they wanted him to make? Another mafia. Yeah. They just wanted him to do another mafia movie, right? And
Fast and Furious 12.
Godfather 12.
More Can you imagine?
And father.
Oh my God. But yeah,
so he's
keep going.
He's just I'm going to do this. I'm going to, similar to what he did with Megalopolis. He didn't self-finance all of it. He needed 14 million. He self-financed half of it. and then the other half he sold distribution rights. Okay, so like there are parallels with Megalopolis here about the self-financing. And
I said,
again,
he's pre-selling it essentially, right?
yeah, pre-selling. You sell the distribution rights for our distributors in Europe. They get to
Yeah.
own it, and then for X.
But
amount
then
of
he
time,
kind of
7
knows,
years.
all right, I've already got this chunk back.
Yeah,
And he can do it a bit more risk-free.
that's the film
in that
industry
way.
in a nutshell. Actually, it's like a lot of financing prior to like the last 10 years. A lot of it was just selling to different markets to get the money in the door. But like with Coppola, and you know, if there's a lesson that not a lesson, but something to draw a line to, something we said at the top, right? It's like I never cared about money, and it's just not an example of it. It's like, and is anybody built? Is everybody built like this? Maybe not, because the shit he went through was insane for this movie. So Harvey Keitel was the first actor. He fired him after 1 week. Martin Sheen became the main actor, and drank so much on set he almost died of a heart attack. Bro.
Oh my God! Wow.
Marlon Brando demanded
Tiger Blood. This is Tiger Blood machine.
Marlon Brando wanted 10% of the film's gross profits and $1 million a week for 3 weeks of work. And in today's dollars, that would have been $16 million for 3 weeks of work. And he showed up on set, never read the book, skimmed through the script, was morbidly obese. And like if you watch The Apocalypse Now, what you'll notice is that Brando is always wearing these over-fitting things. It's because this is the only way to film him without looking ridiculous.
Sorry, by the way, I said the wrong. I was talking about Charlie Sheen there, real quick.
Oh, Charlie Sheen. Okay, yeah. Martin's dad.
Yeah.
Dennis Hopper was snorting 3 grams of cocaine and drinking 20 beers a day.
Sounds like there's a theme here. Yeah.
Yeah. Him and Brando hated each other. A typhoon during filming destroyed the set. So the filming was supposed to last 3 months. It got extended to 16 months. Part of it was this typhoon that delayed filming for 3 months. Actual dead bodies were stolen from a grave in the Philippines. So the movie's supposed to cost 14, ended up being 30. You can multiply that for 5 for nowadays, for inflation adjusted, 150 mil. So how the hell did he pay for this? Because no studio wanted to back it. He had to mortgage his house. He had to sell his profit rights. He owned 6% of Godfather profit rights. He gave up a portion of that in the future to raise money. Bro, we joke here about interest rates. He was taking out 7-figure loans from banks at 27% interest.
That's like payday loan vibes.
That's payday loan money.
That's wild.
And then his boy, George Lucas, in 1977, George Lucas, what movie came out? Star Wars. So George Lucas got some cheddar now. George Lucas saw how much pain his boy Francis Ford Coppola was in. He's like, let me buy the winery from you. Let me buy, the winery is called Inglenook. Let me buy it from you. I'll hold it for 10 years. And you can buy it back at the price, today's price, no appreciation. And
wow, that's a good deal.
Yeah, that's a boy.
It's basically like a loan.
It's a loan, interest-free loan.
Interest-free loan. It's almost like the David Beckham buy, the Miami thing in the future, sort of.
Oh yeah, exactly, right.
Great deal, basically. Like you're not going to turn it down. Deal.
So that happens, and he ended up not. Lucas ended up doing it, helping his buddy. But what a homie. They're homies, right? That's why you mentioned earlier, game recognized game. But then I can wrap this up part with 2 things. I'll say the way it saved it was actually parallels to Megalopolis. He took the film to the Cannes Film Festival, and then everybody that was kind of like, there's whispers in the industry, this movie was just absolute disaster, right? But they filmed it, and they're like, oh, okay, he actually created something pretty special here. And then distributors from other countries started buying it, the rights to it. But I'll add 2 things as a Vietnamese person, you'll laugh. He goes, he said 2 of the most absurd quotes I've ever heard in my life. And this, at the time, he's about 40 years old. When you're a director on a film, you're like a god, right? So like, it's probably how he felt. He goes, this isn't a film about Vietnam. This is Vietnam. And I'm like, ooh.
That's
but then he also said this. Yeah. He also said this, the way we made it was very much like the way the Americans were in Vietnam. We were in the jungle. There were too many of us. We had access to too much money, too much equipment, and little by little, we went insane. I'm like,
oh, yeah.
Bro,
he might have been on some of that gear too, bro. The way he's talking there, man. Jesus Christ.
Did you just call it gear?
Yeah, that's the real English way of calling it.
I mean, it's an incredible movie, right? It's like, 0 Vietnamese speaking parts, but whatever. I get it. It's made from this perspective, American perspective. And
is this the greatest war movie of all time?
It's my favorite Vietnam War movie.
Because there's also Saving Private Ryan is up there.
No, but that's World War. So Vietnam War
Oh
specifically.
no, I was saying specific, just war in general.
No, no. This is the.
This is the one.
Is the one. So the Deer Hunter, Platoon, and Full Metal Jacket were the other ones.
Platoon as well. Oh my god, yeah, phenomenal.
So Oliver Stone. But let me wrap up this section, and then we can fast forward to the end here with this. So Apocalypse Now, we could literally just do. I could do a whole nother episode about this. Jed McKenna wrote an essay. He's an essayist about Francis Ford Coppola, and he actually describes all the pain I just told to you. And also, I forgot to mention he had an affair on set and almost had a divorce from his wife Eleanor, who.
Oh, who was the affair with? Was that a known thing?
I don't know who the affair was. Maybe an assistant, but like 60 plus years he spent with his wife, and like she was the rock in his life. Like shout out to Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Coppola, but he went through hell. He even says like I changed as a human being after this 4-year experience. And then Jed McKenna had this great quote. He goes, Coppola bit off more than he could chew with Apocalypse Now. So the universe reforged him into a tool that could do the job. In the course of trying to find his way, Coppola fell into suicidal despair over the fact that the movie would fail, that he couldn't make the script work, that the project would bankrupt him and ruin his career, that it would cost him his family and health. And then this is the killer line. Be careful what you wish for, not because you'll get it, but because you'll be turned into the thing that can get it for you. It's not a process where you ask for something and it magically appears. It's a process that breaks you down and rebuilds you in the tool for the job. I think when you think about any entrepreneur or like great founder, like we can go to Founders Podcast out on that quote is it. When you see anybody that's super successful and then you ask about something great that was done, it's all pain. Like,
yeah,
it's like that moment at the end where they get that, like, you get the press, the big news article and Wall Street Journal and New York Times, like the lead up to that.
You're ringing the bell, you're going public, whatever it is.
It's all pain, right? And the last thing I'll end with this. So I'll wrap up Apocalypse Now. Did you have any thoughts on that before we just wrap up at the end here?
Oh, that was great. No, I love that. I didn't know that much about Apocalypse Now, to be honest. So that was.
Watch the Heart of Darkness doc. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I'll add this part then. Just his career in a nutshell, the idea of going all in and everything. The very next film he did, so Apocalypse Now came out in 1979. The very next film he did was called One from the Heart. He spent $26 million making this and made $600,000. So I want you to think about that. He spent
26 million and he only made six. That's insane,
bro. So that's it. If we were to reverse
isn't it just wild? After having that many hits,
after having, like we were saying, the greatest 7-year run in film history, he made his biggest personal dud ever. And
what do you think? What do you think drove that? Was it just
he just wanted to try something new and it was
different?
But that's the thing is like you can't know when you're making it. Right? He couldn't have known when he made Apocalypse Now when he started. It'd be the greatest Vietnam War film ever, one of the greatest war films ever. Right? He's like you get. And if we're being honest, overconfidence and hubris, right? Is like he just probably thought he was he probably thought he was bulletproof. Did he? He survived Apocalypse Now, right?
It's a good point because even I think especially in creative stuff we forget they want to do something different too, and that happens a lot in music, obviously. And like I mean, since we've talked about it the whole episode, Kanye is a great example of that too because I'm looking at his albums here. Every time an album came out, everyone was like, oh, not everyone, but so many people are like, oh, that's so different. It's so wacky, so weird. And for a long time, it worked until it got to a certain stage. Like even Yeezus, I mean, I didn't mind Yeezus, but like a lot of people, it just wasn't for them. Jesus is King. Like, I'm looking at these, after, Life of Pablo was still a banger, but after that, for a lot of people, it just dropped off. And it's sometimes you just don't catch it. And then, but the fact that you can come back and then still have another hit after that is kind of amazing as well.
No, you're 100% right. And I'll note two things just jumping off your point though, is like, he was never like Kanye will never do something as good as My Heart and My Dark Twisted Fantasy. Like, that, you know what I mean? It's like Apocalypse Now was literally the creative height of Coppola's career. He's 40 years old. It's been 45 years. Nothing's been close, right? So like, there's a lot. It's just there's no like single thing about.
But I think also with creative stuff, Trung, it's so hard to compare because it's so much based on, it's
culture,
not black and white.
And
it's just nostalgia. It's like, oh, that was when he was the best and he was on the come up. But I'm just trying to think, are there actually directors that ever did, later, they did their best work later when they had a massive hit?
The famous, legendary Japanese director, does a lot of stuff later in his career. And like, you know what,
What
man?
his
It's like,
most
that's a
famous
great
film,
question.
sorry? What was his most famous one?
He did Ran towards the end of his career, but like before that, he did Seven Samurai and Rashomon, but those were earlier. But again, I think
Okay.
you're right, though. I actually think if you look at these, it's hard to do some of your better work at the end. I just think it is.
Even like Steven Spielberg, he's had lots of hits.
Yeah, it's been. I mean, he in 1 year he did Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. He's never reached that again. It's been 30 years, right? It's like sometimes you just hit.
It is kind of, you're right. Like Wilmore, we've talked about this on the pod. You've obviously studied this a lot, like the creative paths of these people, man. It kind of happens in these little clusters for a lot of people. It's very much the saying we've talked about in here, like the sprinting, resting thing, which I feel is not for everyone, but I definitely work like that as well. Just even if nowhere near on this level, but even in my own world, some of the best thing I done were like 3-4 things at once, and then you're like, oh, I'm resting a little bit, I'm doing whatever.
No,
and then you're
like,
like, actually, I'm going back at it again.
The lion thing you mentioned that's great. That's right, but I was like, if you're feeling it, you should just sometimes you got to
crank it out.
Sometimes you just got to not sleep.
I bet Jack. Obviously Jack's not on today, but Jack would probably agree as well. How many times has Jack been like 3-4 things quick hitter after having a baby? He's just like straight into it. You know what I mean?
It's like just pack it all in. But so I'll just wrap up that movie. After you said, you nailed it. It's like huge creative run, biggest flop ever. Like, just think about it. How does that happen? It's so weird, right? And then he spent next decade, he owed about $50 million in debt. And in the next decade, he made 10 movies. And when you start making films to pay off debts, they're just not going to be as good, right? And sadly, in 1986, his eldest son, Giancarlo, died in a boating accident. And that's quite sad. He just did a podcast at Francis Ford Coppola with Ryan Holiday, and I highly recommend this. Francis Ford Coppola did his first podcast ever on the Daily Stoic podcast. We'll put the show notes.
That's an amazing get.
Yeah,
for
crazy,
Ryan Holiday.
amazing get. Well, Ryan Holiday.
He could have gone on any podcast. Obviously, Ryan Holiday is pretty big, but not.
Well, here's the luck of it. Ryan Holiday interned at a Hollywood agency with one of Coppola's assistants now. Crazy.
That's it. So it was in, obviously, yeah.
And also made sense from a theme wise because Ryan Holiday is big about Romans, the Roman.
Oh
era,
yeah, Stoicism, of course,
and that's related to Megalopolis, right? So
that's great.
There's a part of the podcast where Francis Ford Coppola, I mean, dude, is tearjerker. He said, "It took me 30 years after my son died, so that would take it to 1986 wouldn't have been until 2016. So it wasn't until about 10 years ago that he didn't wake up every single day and the first thing that he thought about was his son. He's like, there's nothing like losing a son, and it took me 30 years for it not to be the first thing I thought about every single day. Fucking heart, man.
That's
And then his wife, Eleanor, who they were together for 6 years, passed away earlier this year. He also talked about that. And but anyways, listen to that. The final film that got him out of debt was Bram Stoker's Dracula. We don't have to talk about it, but if you've seen it or anybody's listened, that's the one that got him out of debt. This is hilarious. It got him out of debt finally, and he had about 10 million after everything, and he gave it to his wife. He's like, "I'm so sorry for everything I put you through. Here's 10 million. Why don't you just go buy some like bonds or something?" You're gonna laugh.
Say go buy some bonds.
Yeah, no, literally. A week after he gave her the money, the other half of the Inglenook estate, the winery, went up for sale. He's like, "Eleanor, I'm so sorry. I need that money. We're buying the other half of this estate."
Oh my God.
And it's like, this is before they had really ramped up the wine operation. So again, I never cared about money, right? Like back to the top. It's like living without regrets.
I feel like a lot of people say they don't care, but then you need it. So that there's a consistent theme as well.
But this guy YOLO'd it, right? Yeah, you do need it, right? It was like the Kanye
he needs
quote.
it to take the risk. And that it was back to what you said. I think George Lucas and him basically said, go and do that so we can go do what we want to do. Do what they want to do so we can do what we want to do. And that's
the amount of Kanye callbacks we got here, but what's Kanye's line about money? Blah. You know.
Wait, which one? Go on.
Having money's not everything. Not having it.
It's late in the day here for me.
Okay.
So
having money's not everything. Not having it is, right? When you don't have it.
Oh, yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Okay, so Megalopolis, we'll wrap up this. I know it's getting late for Bilal. Inside Baseball, we're recording a little bit later today.
That's why you can see the colors are getting a little different. It's dark outside. It was raining before. It's all going down.
So let me power through for you at the end here then. Megalopolis coming up this Friday. Listen, do I have any
Adam
idea?
Driver is in it.
Adam Driver. Let me list the cast. Adam Driver. Okay.
I like Adam Driver, man. He's a funny dude.
Aubrey Plaza. She's
killing
smoke
it.
Show.
Yeah.
Smoke show. John Voight, Shia LaBeouf, Dustin Hoffman, Lawrence Fishburne, Larry Fishburne, the longest acting collaborator with Francis Ford Coppola. He was 14 years old in Apocalypse Now. Well, inside baseball for you people. So the last film Francis Ford Coppola made was 2011. It's called Twixt. He hasn't made a movie in 13 years. He is now 85 years old. He has wanted to make a movie about the fall of the Roman Empire in modern times since 1977. He wrote his first treatment for it while filming Apocalypse Now. 6 years later, in 1983, he wrote 400-page script. Okay? Tries to spend the next decade getting finance, unable to. He's kind of going through his rough period. 2001, he's ready to get it made, gets actors on set, start filming around New York, and then 9/11 happens. Puts the thing off because of movies set to where it's about the end of Rome in modern times. The city looks like New York, and like that kind of not the right time to do that, right? He picks the project back up in 2009, rewrites the script over 10 times over the next decade. Now, I think you've seen this. Did you see Anthony Bourdain interview him in 2017?
Oh,
you might
may have. Was it on the Bourdain?
On like no
show?
Reservations or whatever.
Where he goes on the food stuff. Yeah, I've seen a lot of those. I think I have seen it. You know,
if you've ever seen that, or for listeners, just Google it. Francis Ford Coppola is extremely obese in that episode. So he actually watched it after that episode aired. Francis Ford Coppola watched it. He's like, "Oh my god, I need to lose weight, or I'm not going to be able to finish Megalopolis." He lost 75 pounds in 3 months.
Wow! In how many months?
3 to 4 months.
Yo,
he's
that's
like,
wild.
because he realized I'm not going to be able to make Megalopolis if this happens. And he's been trying to make Megalopolis now for 47 years, or today, right? Back then it was 40.
That's
years.
incredible, yeah.
Incredible, right? 2021 sells a winery and sells a large portion of the winery to self-finance Megalopolis, $120 million. And he sells parts of the winery. The parts he doesn't sell, puts up a collateral as a bank line of credit. Takes all that money, starts filming. Films during COVID. Huge problems during COVID. Issues on set, yada, yada, yada.
He's got some bad luck with this, man, yeah.
But doesn't matter. It's ready. There it is on Friday, people. Go watch it.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
well, that's a great... No, I'm definitely going to go watch it now that you said it. That was great, man. Thanks for the write-up breakdown. Everyone should go check out Trunk's write-up on this if you're interested in learning more. And we hope you guys like this style of episode. We mixed it up a little bit today. Hope you guys enjoyed that. And we will see you guys next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.